Hi everyone, this is part 4 of Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. The time I found out Greg is a lousy study partner. Okay, I know this is Greg's official biography and I don't want to put any negative stuff about him in here, but Greg, if you are reading this, I just need you to say you are a terrible study partner. I hope that doesn't hurt your feelings, but somebody has to tell you the truth. Most of the time, I don't really need to study for tests because I pay attention in class and I do my homework. Plus, Mom always says it's important to get a good night's sleep, so on school nights, I go to bed extra early. But this one time, we had a really hard chapter in math and I had trouble paying attention in class that week. That's mostly because Greg moved to the seat right behind me. The night before the test, I knew I was going to have to go over the chapter and do some practice problems at home. But when I told Greg my plan, he said we should study together. I wasn't sure that was such a good idea because when it comes to school stuff, sometimes it's hard for Greg to focus. But Greg said we're best friends and best friends should study together, so I guess that made sense to me. Well, the first thing we had to do was find a place to study. Greg said we couldn't be at his house because his brother Roderick was having band practice. And Greg was banned from my house because he played a practical joke where he put a plastic wrap over our toilet bowl, and he got my dad pretty good. Greg said we should go to the library because it was quiet there and nobody would bug us. So Mrs. Heffley gave us a ride to the library after dinner and we found a table where we could do our work. We got out our books, and I said maybe we should do practice problems to see what we needed to work on. But Greg said he hadn't even read the chapter yet, so we needed to start from the beginning. Well, that was kind of a waste of time for me, so I told Greg he could read the chapter on his own to catch up. But Greg said I was being a bad study partner and that we were supposed to do everything together. I said, okay, fine, let's start from the beginning of the chapter and go through the whole thing. But Greg said before we got started we needed to plan our study breaks so we didn't get too stressed out. Then he said we should start with a break so we'd get off on the right foot. And that's what we did, even though it seemed like a bad idea to me. After like 10 minutes, I said we needed to get to work because it's a long chapter and we have a lot to go through. Well, don't ask me why, but Greg pinched his nose with his fingers and said the same exact thing I said, but with a really annoying voice. Hi, I'm Raleigh, and we need to get to work because it's a long chapter and we have a lot to go through. I told Greg to stop copying me, but that just made him copy me even more. Stop copying me. Finally, I got smart and started reading the chapter out loud. Angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. Angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. A right angle is 90 degrees. A right angle is 90 degrees. After a while, Greg figured out what I was doing, and he stopped copying me. I told him maybe it would be better if we both just read the chapter quietly, but Greg said that wasn't his learning style, and he needed to make things fun so they would stick. I said, what do you mean? And Greg said he knew a way to make learning math into a game. First, he balled up a piece of notebook paper. He said we should take turns reading a few words from the chapter and toss the paper ball back and forth each time. So we tried it, and it worked for a little while, I guess. Two angles that make a straight line have a sum of 180 degrees. But whenever someone dropped the paper ball, Greg said we had to start the whole page over. And sometimes I think Greg was trying to make me drop the ball on purpose. I told Greg we were wasting too much time and we needed to do this another way. And Greg said he didn't care how we studied as long as it was fun. So I told Greg a trick my dad taught me. He said that whenever I had trouble remembering something, I should make up a song to make it easier. Then I sang the song I made up to help me remember how to get the area of a circle. There was this one time when there were these 8 bunnies, and they hopped up this hill, and then 3 of them slid back down, and then 4 bunnies got tired and fell asleep, and then the last bunny got to the top of the hill and said, "The area of a circle is pi r squared." Greg said that was the dumbest thing he ever heard, and I said, "Well, if it's so dumb, then why do I have a 95 in math and you only have a 72? I guess Greg didn't have a good answer to that, and he said it was time for another break. So we played video games on the library computer until some grown-up reported us to the librarian for making too much noise. When we got back to the table, Greg said we weren't studying the right way and that he had an idea of how we could do it better. He said he'd read the first half of the chapter and I'd read the last half, and then we could team up during the test. I said, "Well, you're not allowed to talk during the test, so I don't see how that was going to work." Then Greg told me about these monks who can transmit their thoughts through the air if they concentrate real hard. So we tried doing it, but I guess I couldn't concentrate good enough to make it work. 8 divided by 2, hamburger. Greg said we needed to figure out a different way to communicate during the test. I said if we just studied the chapter, we wouldn't need to communicate, but once Greg gets something in his head, he doesn't let it go. He made up this whole system of sneezes and coughs and stuff so we could talk to each other during the test without our teacher, Miss Beck, noticing. But there was a lot to remember, so I wrote it all down. I said, well, what if one of us needs to ask the other guy a question? And Greg said, "You just put a question mark at the end." And I said, "Well, we don't have a signal for a question mark." And Greg said it could be a fart. I told Greg I didn't think I could fart if I didn't really need to, and Greg told me to try it anyway, and I did, but nothing came out. So Greg told me some different foods I could eat for breakfast that would make it easier to do a question mark. But that idea made me nervous because the last time I went to Greg's, we drank a bunch of soda and tried to burp the alphabet, and I got sick on the letter B and had to go home early. Greg said, okay, if I couldn't fart for real, then it would be okay to make a fake fart noise under my arm. That's when I told Greg I thought this was a bad idea and it was cheating to send each other signals during the test. Greg said I was being a goody two-shoes and that the only reason I wanted to get a good grade in math was because I was a teacher's pet and I was in love with Miss Beck. I said I was not in love with Miss Beck, but that I just like her personality and the way she smells. So Greg said, that proves I'm in love with Miss Beck, and then he sang that song about 2 people sitting in a tree. I knew Greg was trying to make me mad, but for some reason the song didn't really bother me that much. Rowley and Miss Beck sitting in a tree, Kissing. I guess Greg got mad that he wasn't making me mad, so he started singing even more. I'm Rowley studying for the test. Ooh yeah, I'm studying real hard. I tried to tune him out, but he just got louder and louder. Oh yeah, now I'm plugging my ears so I can't hear Greg, but I can hear him anyway, yeah. Then I went into the bathroom and tried to study in there, but Greg followed me. Yeah, I'm Rowley, trying to study in a bathroom stall. Oh yeah. But I guess somebody else complained because the librarian came in and told us we both had to get out of there. She said if we made any more noise, she was going to have to call our parents and have them come get us. Well, that sounded great to me, but I don't think Greg was ready to go home, so we promised we'd quiet down. I really didn't want to sit at the same table as Greg anymore, so I moved to one of those desks with dividers between them. But Greg sat right across from me. I was starting to get some work done, but then Greg slid a note under the divider. He had a math question, so I answered him and passed the note back. Hey, Rowley, what do the angles in a quadrilateral add up to? Greg. 360 degrees. R. And then Greg asked me another question, but I didn't really mind because this was a million times better than the way we were doing things before. But then Greg slid the note back and it had another question on it that didn't have anything to do with math at all. Check 1. I am embarrassed I wet the bed last night. Yes, no. Well, I checked the no box because I didn't wet the bed. I slid the note to Greg, but then he wrote something on it and slid it back. Ha ha ha, you're not embarrassed you wet the bed. That made me kind of mad because that's not what I meant. But I didn't want to spend a lot of time explaining myself because I really needed to get back to studying. So Greg wrote another note and slid it under the divider. Truth or dare? I didn't want to take a dare from Greg, so I picked truth. But I didn't like the question Greg came up with. Are you in love with Miss Beck? Okay, I switched to dare. Then Greg dared me to get him a soda from the vending machine. I didn't know that was the way truth or dare worked, but I was just glad Greg didn't make me answer that question. After I got Greg his soda, I did a little more studying, but then he started up with the notes again. Hey, Rowley, that's you. Well, I didn't like that, so I sent a drawing of my own. Oh yeah? Well, that's you. And then Greg drew another picture of me, and I drew another one of him. That's you. Well, then that's you. After a while, we filled up 2 whole pages with drawings. Greg tried to start a new page of drawings, but I just ignored him. And I guess he didn't like that because he kept trying to get my attention. I decided to move to a new spot that wasn't so close to Greg. I was glad I could finally get some peace and quiet, but that didn't last long.